A short-lived revolt by Russia's Wagner Group mercenaries has left Moscow seeking to restore calm and the Kremlin looking to reassert Vladimir Putin's authority. Western analysts say the failed mutiny has further exposed the weaknesses of the Russian president. But many questions remain about how the dramatic events will inform Putin's next steps and what they could mean for the war in Ukraine.
In Rostov-on-Don, there's now little sign of the city's brush with an armed Russian rebellion. These tank tracks among the only reminders of the many Wagner fighters who rolled into town and took control here.
It's calm in the city today. No more fighters here with white armbands. Yesterday there were plenty of them here, and people, in my opinion, supported them, bringing them food, water and cigarettes.
It all ended perfectly well, thank God, with minimal casualties. I think, good job. I believe this was the right thing to do.
What prompted this man to suddenly halt Wagner's march to Moscow is still a point of much speculation. Yevgeny Prigozhin left Rostov in a flurry of handshakes and cheers late Saturday, apparently agreeing to stand down his private army of mercenaries after talks with an old friend. The Kremlin later revealing the terms of the deal struck with the Belarusian leader.
An agreement was reached that Wagner will return to their camps. No one will prosecute them, considering their merits on the front line. We've always had respect for their heroic acts on the front line, and we will always maintain this respect. You asked me what will happen with Prigozhin. A criminal case against him will be closed, and he will go to Belarus.
In Moscow, many security measures put in place to counter any Wagner assault on the capital remain, although you'd be hard-pressed to know it. But behind the walls of the Kremlin, it may take some time yet for President Putin to forget the last few days and the biggest domestic threat so far to his leadership since taking power.
And those events in Moscow are being watched closely by Russia's rivals. On Sunday, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the Wagner rebellion had exposed cracks in the Kremlin.
Now what we've seen is Russia having to defend Moscow, its capital, against mercenaries of its own making. So in and of itself, that's extraordinary. And in so doing, we've also seen rise to the surface profound questions about the very premises for this Russian aggression against Ukraine that Prigozhin surfaced very publicly, as well as a direct challenge to Putin's authority. So I think we've seen more cracks emerge in the Russian facade. It is too soon to tell exactly where they go and when they get there, but certainly we have all sorts of new questions that Putin is going to have to address in the weeks and months ahead.
The US Secretary of State speaking there. We're going to cross straight to our correspondent, Jennifer Palka, who is in Riga, Latvia. That's where DW's Moscow bureau has been operating since it was closed down by Russia. Good to see you, Jennifer. Now, we've heard the US Secretary of State speaking of cracks in the Kremlin, of Putin looking weaker. Does that sound right to you, or is it more wishful thinking on the part of Russia's rivals?
Well, there are two possible scenarios on what this situation does with Vladimir Putin. Some think, especially the West, that it shows Putin's weakness, a sign that he's losing control on internal affairs in Russia. But you could actually also compare it to the attempted coup d'etat in Turkey on Turkey's President Erdogan in 2016, after which Erdogan emerged even stronger. So the other possibility would be that Putin could also emerge even stronger from this. At the moment, he is like a wounded animal, and he's also not known for his forgiving nature when it comes to people threatening his power, like Prigozhin did. And also he hates to look weak in front of Russians, and especially in front of the West. And the brokered deal with Belarus, well, it just makes him look that weak. So in the long run, this could also mean a more severe and even more oppressive Putin for Russia.
All right, we've obviously got to wait to see what happens. But in terms of Yevgeny Prigozhin, do we actually know where he is right now?
Well, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov announced on Saturday that the deal was struck between Belarus, Lukashenko, Vladimir Putin, and Prigozhin. And according to Peskov, Prigozhin will go to neighboring Belarus, which has supported Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Charges against him of mounting an armed rebellion would also be dropped. But so far, there has been no reports about Prigozhin arriving there. Also quite surprising is that neither Putin nor Prigozhin, who regularly sends out audio and video updates on Telegram, has been heard from. So it is still unknown if he arrived in Belarus or if he even will be able to make it safely there.
Okay, and perhaps more crucially, what is going to happen to the mercenaries of the Wagner mercenary group? I mean, is Russia going to be able to wage its war on Ukraine without their support?
Well, many questions remain unanswered when it comes to the future of the Wagner Group. One of them is whether Prigozhin would be joined in exile by his troops and what role he and his army might have in Belarus. Even though the Russian government also said it would not prosecute Wagner fighters who took part in the revolt, well, Anya, Putin and his government are not known to be very forgiving when it comes to situation that puts their grip on power in jeopardy. So there could be a wave of prosecutions coming once the situation has settled down a little bit. But on the other hand, the war in Ukraine is not going as planned for Russia, and the war machinery is in desperate need of manpower. So the lack of success in Ukraine so far could also lead to no prosecution or dismantling of the Wagner Group, as they are still crucial for the war in Ukraine. Also, those soldiers who did not join the revolt could be offered contracts by the defense ministry.
All right, Jennifer, thanks so much. That's DW's Jennifer Palka reporting from Riga. For more, we can speak to Walter Feichtinger. He's a former Brigadier General of the Austrian Armed Forces and is currently serving as the president of the Centre for Strategic Analysis in Vienna. Thanks so much for joining us today. Has everything that's been happening in Russia really made Putin weaker now, or is there the potential that he could be using this to crack down and emerge potentially even stronger?
First of all, the picture of a weak Putin is on the table, I would say. And he will intend to do everything to get his image back as a strong leader, as a very important person, as the only one in the state who can lead the state. So it is expectable that he will do everything. And what does it mean to do everything? First of all, he has to demonstrate that he is the leader. So the personal environment can expect some changes, I would say. And in external affairs, especially in the war in Ukraine, he will do everything to put more pressure on the military forces to show and to demonstrate the world and his population, I'm still in place and we are stronger as we were before.
You mentioned likely changes. There are pictures now emerging of the Russian Defense Minister, Sergei Shoigu. There have been rumours he could be on his way out as part of the deal that Prigozhin struck. Do you think this is likely, given that Putin is now trying to reaffirm his authority?
I wouldn't expect it for the next days or next weeks, because in this case, he would agree to Mr. Prigozhin that he was right in his assessment. So I would say he could wait a little bit, and it could be a bigger change in his total environment, not only regarding the Minister of Defense and maybe the General Staff. And so it could be a bigger environmental change, I would say. And so in this way, he could avoid to have the picture that Mr. Prigozhin was right.
OK. And what do you think is going to happen to Yevgeny Prigozhin, the Wagner chief, and also, obviously, his mercenaries who've been so instrumental in Russia's invasion of Ukraine?
It is one of the most important points, I would say, at that time, because we have a number of 25,000 mercenaries. They are well equipped, they are trained, they are experienced in war fighting. And what to do with them? They have to be under control of the state of Russia. If it is not the case, they can do everything in Russia and abroad. First. The second one is the mercenaries are a very important military tool for Russia. Let us look at Syria, for example, and at Mali recently. So Putin is not interested, I can imagine, to lose this very important military tool. So what could be the solution? To have a new leader, to have a new commander instead of Mr. Prigozhin. And that is one of the biggest questions. Will Mr. Prigozhin accept that he has no strong role in the future on his mercenaries?
We heard the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken say that the weekend's events have exposed cracks in the Kremlin. In your opinion, does this change how the West should be dealing with Putin going forward?
From my understanding, the West should be very cautious in this regard, because we have to avoid that the West is pushing for a regime change in Kremlin. It would feed Putin's narrative that the West is responsible for all the bad developments in his country and in Ukraine. So be very careful, see it as an internal affair in Russia, and also demonstrate it and pronounce it to the other side. Secondly, keep all the information channels and communication channels open in order to see what is happening and be ready if there is a bigger change and you have to act.
Walter Feichtinger, President of the Center for Strategic Analysis in Vienna. Thank you so much for your time today and for your analysis.
You're welcome.